All right, Shalom. First and foremost, I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakah Kodash, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS Great Millstone, and a sincere Shalom to Yaki in bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. And now, this article is from endtimeheadlines.org, as you see. It says, China detains dozens of underground church pastors in fresh crackdown. And this is, although these, these Moabites here, are ultimately practicing Christianity within, their land of China. We understand that this is going to be a precursor to what occurs unto the men of Yahweh Shema Shah who really believe. All throughout the book of Acts, you go through it and you read how the ministry was public out in the streets, but then it became a time where our apostles continue to get persecuted for it. They were getting sent to prison, being locked up, being beaten for preaching the words of Yahweh Shema Shah in the streets. So then it became more so, a private thing, much like how Yahweh Shai was speaking in parables unto those that understood it. That was a precursor into ultimately the word being taught to select individuals or elect individuals, right? So this says China detains dozens of underground church pastors in fresh crackdown. It says in a significant escalation of religious restrictions, right? Because we know how strict they are over there. They don't really want, they want one religious authority over in China, right? It says Chinese authorities have detained dozens of pastors from one of the country's largest underground Christian churches, marking the most severe action against Christians since 2018, right? Which is funny because they're calling them Christians, right? But really, as the apostles even just went into, to be called a Christian is really a nationality, because only the Israelites, who so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans, can really be Christians, right? Because we were first called Christians at Antioch, right? And Christian was used forth as a derogatory term, of those that were actually following Yahweh Shai when he was on the earth walking, man, right? And those people that were following him were who? Israelites, right? So to be a Christian, you first and foremost have to be an Israelite, and a follower of the Messiah, Yahweh Shai, who the world ignorantly calls, the Christ, right? It says the arrests which targeted leaders of Zion Church have sparked international condemnation and raised concerns about worsening religious persecution under President Xi Jinping's regime. It says the detentions began over the weekend with Pastor Jin Mingri, the founder of Zion Church, taken into custody at his home in the southern city of Nigh on Friday evening, right? And it's funny, because Christianity is ultimately, poisoned the whole world due to the fact that it does not teach, the truth of the actual gospel of the scriptures, man. It's a doctrine made by men, and it was made ultimately to suppress you so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans here, right? And Esau used it as a weapon against us, not understanding that Yahweh Shai was soon going to break those seals open and send us Elijah the prophet, later on down that line, to turn the hearts of men, or turn the hearts of the sons of God back into Yahweh, man. But I want to grab these precepts here, because this is still a spiritual lesson, because it's a precursor of what's about to occur here in the States. We understand Yahweh Shema Shah is going to close the breaches of hearing this word, much like how he sealed the door of the ark in the days of Noah, right? This is Amos 8:11, and it reads, it says, behold, the days come, saith Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread, though we understand, a famine of bread will come, right? And Esau is engineering that famine now. It says, not a famine of bread nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai. And we understand hearing the words of Yahweh Shema Shai are far more precious than, physical food. Because those that have that wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, as Yahweh Shai told that woman at the well, I have water in which you will never thirst again. Ultimately, food is a necessity. You need water and food in order to survive. But guess what? Ultimately, if you're of that number, and Yahweh Shema Shai has your faith, sealed, then guess what? The Lord, in Jacob's trouble, the Lord, Yahweh Shema Shai, can have it to where you just don't even get hungry, but you never lose energy. Wasn't it during the time of Elijah? I believe it was either Elijah or Elisha, in which the woman's grain and oil, it says her cruse of oil didn't even fail. Matter of fact, cruse. I think I spelled that wrong. I know that's not how you spell it. Oh, is it? Cruise of oil. Hey, call on. This is it right here. Yeah, it is cruise. I spelled it correctly. Call on Yahbashim Shai. Right, this 1 Kings 17 and 12, right? And I believe it is Elijah. Yep, it's Elijah, right? 1 Kings 17 and 8, just to prove the point of how the Lord will sustain those in whom are elected, to be saved. And those are ultimately the same ones that have that water, in which they'll never thirst again. Those that have stored up those spiritual treasures in heaven, right? It says, and the word of Yahweh Shema Shai came unto him, saying, Arise, get thee to Zarephath, which belongeth to Zidon, and dwell there. Behold, I have commanded a widow woman there to sustain thee. So that in itself, the fact that the Lord commanded a widow woman there to sustain him, right? Because we understand, you can have or store up as much food as you want. You can be a so-called prepper, but hey, ultimately, if Yahweh Shema Shai has a judgment written for you, then to what avail is that food? Food can only do so much. Food can't stop you when a martial law troop is, coming into your house, or when the great insurrection is happening in the civil wars in the streets of America. Food isn't a protection in that sense. What is food going to do for you if there's a pestilence and your family is affected? What is food going to do in the midst of an earthquake? And your house is swallowed up with your family in it. This is why the scriptures talk about the word, engrafted word, which is able to save thy soul. Right? Because even when it goes into people saying, oh, well, we got weapons. Yeah, well, you can't eat bullets. So now what? Yeah, you can potentially protect yourself, but Yahweh Shema Shai can have it to where a troop is coming into your home, and you got your weapon, and your gun jams. Right? It's going to be judgments that occur just like that. Right? So it shows you that the words of Yahweh Shema Shai are far more precious than these physical necessities. Right? It says, continuing, behold, the widow woman was there gathering of sticks, and he called to her and said, Fetch me, I pray thee, a little water in a vessel, that I may drink. And as she was going to fetch it, he called to her and said, Bring me, I pray thee, a morsel of bread in thine hand. And she said, As the Lord thy power Yahweh liveth, I have not a cake, but a handful of meal in a barrel, and a little oil in a cruse. And behold, I am gathering 2 sticks, that I may go in and dress it for me and my son, that we may eat it and die. Basically saying, hey, she's going to eat the rest of what she has, and after that, hey, she's done. They'll die because they don't have any more food. Right? Food can run out. And Elijah said unto her, Fear not, go and do as thou hast said, but make me thereof a little cake first, right? And bring it unto me, and after make for thee and for thy son, right? Basically, and this was unto her to be obedient, right? Because this was ultimately directions from Yahweh Shema Shai spoken through Elijah. It says, For thus saith the Lord power of Israel, the barrel of meal shall not waste, neither shall the cruse of oil fail, unto the day that the Lord Yahweh sendeth rain upon the earth. And she went and did according to the saying of Elijah, and he, and her house did eat many days. And the barrel of meal wasted not, neither did the cruse of oil fail, according to the word of Yahweh by Hashem Yahushai, which he spake by Elijah. So there it is. Being the fact that Elijah was a man of the Lord continuously fed him from that same oil and the cruse of meal that never failed. Without the spirit of Yahweh Shema Shai upon him, guess what? That they eat that last meal and then they starve, ultimately resulting potentially in cannibalism. Right? So when we go back into the book of Amos, the 8th chapter, and 11, it says, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord Yahweh, that I will send a famine in the land, not a famine of bread nor a thirst for water, but of hearing the words of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai. And they shall wander from sea to sea, and from the north even to the east. They shall run to and fro to seek the word of Yahweh Bashim Yahushai, and shall not find it. Right? And there's going to be a scarcity. Right? And this is what these Chinese are going through. These Moabites are going through, man. Now they believe that Christianity is going to save them, which they're sadly mistaken. But nevertheless, just the fact that this is happening is proof, as the scripture says, there's nothing new under the sun, right? It's happening there, and things usually happen in these foreign countries before it hits the shores of America, right? So this is going to happen here in the States as well, man, right? That's Amos 8 and 11. I want to grab a precept out of the book of John 9 and the 4th verse, and it reads, it says, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. And ultimately, Yahweh Shema Shai is going to, as the scriptures speak of in the book of Psalms, the 19th chapter, about the unicorn, where the Lord is going to, allow Esau to take the videos and us being able to post these videos off the web, right? So whatever works you have stored up until that point, that's what you have. If you have none, then the oil within your lamp is very low, right? And it's not just about doing the videos. It's about your conduct outside of the body when you're away from brothers. So are you fasting? Are you praying? Are you reading? Are you studying? Are you watching lessons? Do you really believe? Right? Because the night cometh when no man can work. Yahweh Shema Shai is gonna turn this practice or this scrimmage into a real game, man. And the countdown for the clock for the quarter to start is very nigh. Right? So you want to make sure that you putting in that work, specifically talking unto you men. Right? The Lord is speaking unto his men. The flock of the Lord's pasture are men. Right? He needs more workers. It says, according to church spokesperson Sean Long and Jen's daughter, authorities also rounded up nearly 30 pastors and church members across the nation, though 5 were later released. Approximately 20 individuals remain in detention, facing potential charges related to the dissemination of religious information online. There it is, right? What just happened is a part of a new wave of religious persecution this year, noting that police had questioned over 150 worshipers and intensified harassment during in-person Sunday services in recent months. So let's get to some precepts in the book of Acts. It's coming from the book of Acts, the 8th chapter, in the 1st verse. And it reads, and Saul was consenting unto his death, speaking about the death of Stephen, right? It says, and at that time there was a great persecution against the church, which was at Jerusalem. And they were all scattered abroad throughout the regions of Judea and Samaria, except the apostles, right? So it was a great persecution. And Saul, before, he became Apostle Paul, was actually persecuting the church, right? So the same thing is going to happen again, man. There's going to be a great persecution, as the scripture says in the book of 2nd Esdras, a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord, right? A great uprising, This is just what we have to endure. This is part of that bitter that the scriptures speak about. See, and you other Israelite groups aren't teaching this. So when these prophecies occur and your congregation are completely blindsided by them, they're not going to be mentally or spiritually stable in order to endure it. So they're going to what? They're going to turn the other way and ultimately condemn what they once, quote unquote, believed. Right? This Acts 5 in verse 40. Sheesh, I can. All throughout the book of Acts, the apostles were being locked up for teaching Yahweh Shai. Matter of fact, I'm going to start here. I was about to go to 42, but I'll start here at sheesh. I got it, yeah. Acts 5 and 16. There came also a multitude out of the cities round about unto Jerusalem, bringing sick folks, and them which were vexed with unclean spirits, and they were healed every one. Then the high priest rose up, and all they that were with him, which is the sect of the Sadducees, and were filled with indignation, right? and laid their hands on the apostles and put them in the common prison. But the angel of the Lord by night opened the prison doors and brought them forth and said, Go, stand and speak in the temple to all the people, all the words of this life. And when they heard that, they entered into the temple early in the morning and taught. But the high priest came, and they that were with him, and called the council together, and all the senate of the children of Israel, and sent to the prison to have them brought. Right? So they went to go send the apostles to bring them to trial. It says, but when the officers came and found them not in the prison, they returned and told, saying, the prison truly found we shut with all safety, and the keeper standing without before the doors. But when we had opened, we found no man within. Now when the high priest and the captain of the temple and the chief priest heard these things, they doubted of them whereunto this would grow. Then came one and told them, saying, Behold, the men whom ye put in prison are standing in the temple and teaching the people. Right? So it's just a miracle that the Lord, sent forth that angel to allow them to escape from prison. And this is going to happen again. Certain brothers are going to be locked up. And guess what? Brothers are going to encounter angels, and angels are going to free Akim again. It happened in the book of Acts. It has to happen again. It says, then went the captain with the officers and brought them without violence. Right? For they feared the people, lest they should have been stoned. And when they had brought them, they set them before the council. We understand we're going to be brought before kings or governors and courts, right? As the scripture tells us in the book of Luke. It says, and the high priest asked them, saying, did not we straightly command you that ye should not teach in this name? And behold, ye have filled Jerusalem with your doctrine and intend to bring this man's blood upon us. And Jake already look at us like this, man. In a way that we're vexing unto them, right? As the scripture says, it says, when a man depart from, he maketh, it's like I'm mixing up two precepts. I say making righteousness. It's I believe this is the one. Yeah, Isaiah 59:15, it says, yea, truth faileth, and he that departed from evil maketh himself a prey. And the Lord saw it, and it displeased him that there was no judgment. And ultimately, through us, as the scriptures talk about the foolishness of preaching, ultimately, we're rebuking Jake, man. And in that rebuke, as the scripture says in the book of John 3, they refused to come into the light because their deeds were evil. Right? And they're going to, Esau's going to point the blame due to categoreo, and Jake is going to take that bait and persecute us as well. 29 says, then Peter and the other apostles answered and said, we ought to obey Yahweh rather than men. The power of our fathers raised up Yahweh Shai, whom ye slew and hanged on a tree. All right, now I'm going to jump down into the 40th verse. It says, and to him they agreed, and when they had called the apostles and beaten them, they commanded that they should not speak in the name of Yahweh Shai, and let them go. And they departed from the presence of council, rejoicing that they were counted worthy to suffer shame for his name. All right, and that's the important part. We have to suffer. Suffer, really, as the scriptures say, suffer wrongfully, because what we're doing is right. Right? But we have to suffer as Yahweh Shai suffered. The servant is not greater than his Lord, as the scripture tells us. It says, and daily in the temple and in every house, showing you that the ministry went from public to private, right? As these people in China, they were practicing forth their ministry underground. Well, it says, and in every house they cease not to teach and preach Yahweh Shai. I'm reading in the NLT. It says, and every day in the temple and from house to house, they continue to teach and preach this message. Yahweh Shai is the Messiah. Right? And that was due to the fact that they were getting persecuted publicly for teaching. So ultimately, the Lord changed the ministry from it being easily accessible to now only a certain few individuals were blessed to hear it. Ultimately, the men of Yahweh Bashim Yahshua that had it. But those certain individuals who were able to hear it, the Lord had to choose, those individuals in order for them to receive those words. Because the scripture tells us this in the book of Ezekiel, the 3rd chapter. It's Ezekiel 3:26, and it reads, it says, "And I will make thy tongue cleave to the roof of thy mouth, that thou shalt be dumb, and thou shalt not be to them a reprover, for they are a rebellious house." Right? This is 26 in the NLT. "And I will make your tongue stick to the roof of your mouth, so that you will be speechless and unable to rebuke them, for they are rebels." So guess what? Hey, we're doing the rebuke now. We're on the highways and hedges preaching now. But the night is going to come, hey, when the Lord is going to, shut our mouths from teaching. It's either you have it or you don't. We're not going to be a reprover in the day of prophecy when all hell break loose and famine and martial law and race, civil riots and pestilence, great evils, apparitions, newly created creatures. Hey, it's not going to be a point of prophesying, because prophesy means to say before. We're going to be in the midst of it. So it's not going to be anything to say. So you see it here, right? It says, long speaking from his home in the United States, highlighted how the church grew. It says through Zoom sermons and small gatherings, may have drawn government scrutiny. It says, crackdown follows new regulations from China's top religion regulator, which ban unauthorized online religious activities and prohibit foreign collusion. And we know Esau is going to make forth those unrighteous decrees here in the States that say the same thing. Things typically happen in China, in these other nations before Esau brings them here. Right? So now, it's funny because it says the arrest occurred amid heightened U.S.-China tensions, including Beijing's recent expansion of rare earth export controls. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio condemned the actions on Sunday, calling for the immediate release of the pastors. And they're not about to listen to that devil, right? They controlling what they're controlling in their land, right? But Marco Rubio is going to soon be one of the individuals here that are going to be condemning the men of the Lord, right? All these politicians are going to be doing it. So, hey, it's going to be very hypocritical for this statement of him saying this statement to what actions he's going to be having to uphold in the soon days. But this is the point, man. We're our salvation is nigh. Ultimately, we understand persecution of the men of the Lord is ultimately going to bring forth a standard. To be arisen as well. And when they try to come down upon us, as the scripture says in Isaiah 59. So that's pretty much the point. Not to make the lesson too lengthy or lengthier than it already is, but it had to come out. Lord willing, this lesson was edifying into the body. I want to give all praise, glory, and honor unto Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahweh Shai, Bahashim, Harakah HaKodash. A double honors unto the apostles and elders of GMS Great Millstone. And a sincere shalom to Yakim, bringing out this word in diligence and in truth. Shalom.